of availability. He added the plan right now is to give people the same brand of vaccine when it is time for the booster. Fauci said there's still no evidence the Delta variant hits children harder than other versions of the virus. He concluded the vaccine is testing well against any variant, and he's confident the booster will only increase that protection. You're listening to the latest from NBC News Radio.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT Willow Springs is powered by ComEd. Lower your energy bills and reduce your carbon footprint with the ComEd Energy Efficiency Program.
The Hal Sparks radio program.
There are millions of people in the United States who are avoiding getting vaccinated, not because they were anti-vax 6 years ago or 2 years ago or even genuinely that way now, but because it is literally just an act of stubborn fealty to Donald John Trump.
Hal Sparks, Saturdays from 11 to 1 on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk. Diabetes, high blood pressure, anxiety meds, everyone's on them. If you're a 50-year-old male, maybe a bit beefy, or even with type 2 diabetes, $1 million of term insurance may only cost you about $200 a month. Affordable term life insurance is out there. Call Term Provider and speak with Big Lou at 800-481-1458. 800-481-1458 or visit biglou.com. Remember, Big Lou's like you. He's on meds too.
Hey, we get it. You don't want to be hearing a Progressive commercial right now, so let us tell you something you do want to hear. You are intelligent. You make all the right decisions. You were smart before smart was cool, and you made it cool again. You have a wealth of knowledge, and you are so very clever. I bet you already knew I was going to say that, you genius. There, don't you feel better? You'll also feel better when you hear you could save big when you switch to Progressive. But I'm pretty sure you already knew that, too. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates.
Ad paid for by Open Jar Concepts. Attention, this is an important notice for anyone who has used a Philips CPAP machine or ventilator. In June 2021, the FDA announced that Philips issued a recall affecting nearly 4 million CPAP, BiPAP, and ventilator units. The recall was issued due to health risks associated with the foam utilized for sound reduction, which may degrade over time into harmful chemicals. The Philips CPAP recalled devices can potentially result in injuries including kidney, liver, or heart damage, cancer, or severe skin, ear, nose, or throat inflammation. If you or a loved one used a Philips CPAP, BiPAP, or ventilator and later suffered an injury, you may be entitled to significant compensation. Call us now at 800-950-7195. Our experienced attorneys will fight to get you the compensation you deserve, and you pay nothing unless there's a recovery in your favor. Time is limited to file a claim, so call us at 800-950-7195. That's 800-950-7195. Again, 800-950-7195.
Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT 820, where facts matter.
We're going to need to go ahead and move you downstairs into storage B.
No,
we
I was told I could
have some
not.
new people coming in, and we need all the space we can get.
But there's no space.
So if you could just go ahead and pack up your stuff and move it down there, that would be terrific.
I was told
okay?
I could stay.
God, it's dark down here. Cafe flashlight? Hey, shoo! Here it is, boys. Let's do it. Let's go! Live from the basement of WCPT 820 in Chicago, this is the Sports Cubicle, where the inmates run the asylum. Sports our king and our boss yells at us on Monday morning. Now, you're probably going, where is the Rewind Sports 60? And I assure you, Jerry Riles is okay, sports are okay, and WCPT is okay. I'm going to leave that music going like Jerry does for a little bit. Now, if you're hearing this voice, I was executive producer Devin Tingle of the Rewind Sports 60, but we've moved on a little bit, and now we have this new show. It's called the Sports Cubicle, and you get introduced first. How does that feel?
Wow, I actually get an introduction now. It's an honor to be a part of this, and we got to thank the proper channels, the proper people. I think Mark Pinsky and Jerry Riles get the first thanks for allowing this to happen.
I was going to first go off to Jerry Riles, our radio mentor, so to speak. The guy, sports legend for years. He's given the kids, even though you're 45 now,
the chance. Just call me a kid though.
Giving us the chance to prove ourselves and earn our stripes here. And of course, our bosses Matt Cummings and Mark P. Train Pinsky, for giving us Thank you. Giving us the chance to just prove our chops here. And, of course, we got some familiar faces. Well, in this case, voices you might have heard. Now, he's not in the studio. I'm looking at that chair. I don't think he's at Wrigley Field. And I think he told me he's out with his wife and kids today. He's the marvelous one. You may have heard him. He's Dan Marver. What's going on, Marver?
Hey, you got me. I'm at my palatial estate right now, and I have people coming and going. It's unbelievable. I got son in, daughter gone, blah, 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 sister in, all kinds of stuff going on.
It's crazy. We miss you over here, Marver. And, of course,
okay.
You may have heard this voice, too. I mean, he's been on a few stations around here, and I think he's, yeah. Are you on your couch right now, Mercado, or are you actually up and moving? You get off your butt today?
I got off the butt. I'm on the dance floor. I am live on location at a wedding in a premiere or soft premiere episode. I am a horrible co-host. I love you guys. I love this. Shout out Jerry Riles, Matt Cummings, Mark Pinsky, my end of the studio, George Murillo, and of course, Marver, Paul, Devin. It is a pleasure to be the weakest link of this show. I am so excited to bring sports in the greatest city in the world, Chicago, IO on WCPT, 8:20 a.m.
The weakest link when Paul's here. It's crazy.
Right, and you guys made a big mistake missing the first episode because now you're giving me more airtime, and that's going to set the tone for all the future shows.
So I want to talk a little bit about what this show is and a little bit just about us. So Paul, Mercado, and myself, we all work at NewsWeb Radio, WCPT, WSBC, WNDZ. And, I started working here in 2019 along with Paul, and I wore this hat. It was a White Sox hat, and in 2019, if you remember the White Sox, you did not want to be a fan then. You didn't want to admit you were a fan then. Then Paul, he's like, hey, is that a White Sox hat? And then we just kind of clicked. And if you want to tell you and Mercado's story, how you guys met, you worked here before me.
Oh, gosh, yeah, I go way too far back with Mercado. We actually met up at the Illinois Center for Broadcasting about 10 years ago, if you could believe it. And we started working together about 7 years ago here with the NewsWeb Radio Company family of radio stations. And we've been bothering each other ever since. And now we see even more of each other. And somehow we landed a show together, even though we've appeared on each other's podcasts and shows over the years.
Yeah, and Marver, he joined us from the Rewind Sports 60, as you remember, with Jerry Riles. Jerry should be back eventually. He's taking some time off, but in the meantime, they're letting us run the show till he's back. So the reason we chose the Sports Cubicle is because we all became friends at work through our love of sports. And I feel like that was the best way to kind of, take over. So this is the Sports Cubicle. I guess we're a branch of the Rewind Sports 60, we can call ourselves.
I would say so. If Jerry allows it, I would like to be. So.
All right, boys. Now, we got you on the phone, Marver Mercado, so it'll be nice. The Cubs are on you said 6-game win streak now, Paul?
Mm-hmm. Six.
Yeah, I know. It is the sign of the devil, Marver. Who sold their soul for this one?
They're going to ruin their draft position.
So I want to know what you guys have to say. You are the Cubs fans here. How does this make you feel now that, Rizzo, Baez, and Bryant are gone, and now they're on a win streak all of a sudden again?
Well, you got Schwindel, and then there's really Duffy. Both had grand slams today, and Wisdom is going to break the all-time record for rookie home runs. So there's three career minor leaguers that have come through, Ortega too. So, the pitching has been a problem, but Wick looks like their closer now, or he or Hoyer. So they seem to have a few pieces, but none of them will probably be big pieces long-term because I suspect they'll do something over the winter to change the composition of the team.
And I think that's what it comes down to, right, Marver? And the boys down there could talk about it a little later on the show if they get a chance to. But I think most of it comes down to, as much fun as this is, on a winning streak, like in Major League, that's a winning streak. We've done it before. It's nice to see them in this position. But I think more importantly, we'll see what happens for the ramifications next year. Who's going to stick around? How much confidence do they have on them? Do they think they're a young player here or there, a Trevor Story here or there away from making noise? But enjoy it while you can, because we all know in the late September, October months, the White Sox and the Bears will be taking over this town. So for our Cub fans, enjoy what was a wonderful Labor Day weekend.
With this being the last last month of the regular season, and the Cubs not being in competitive mode, tickets probably dropping down, easier to get tickets, easier to get to Wrigley Field. This has got to be a fun team to watch right now. I would imagine that tomorrow would be a good day to go to Wrigley Field and go see them. No answer. Nothing. You guys don't agree?
Yeah, well, you got the Reds. Marvel would know. Yeah, the Reds are the number 2 wild card, so they're playing for something right now. And then our old friend Chris Bryant's coming in over the weekend, so it might be worth going out there.
Yeah, and you bring up
September is all about watching the young guys, right? I mean, Paul and I, you talking about this every single year since we've known each other and haven't killed each other yet. Is September, if your team isn't good, it's all about the call-ups and to see what the future is about. So this, like, maybe if you catch yourself a nice weather game against, like Marv was saying, a playoff team or a guy coming back and a playoff team on top of that, enjoy some of these call-ups and see if you're going to see the guys that are going to be part of the playoff Cubs in a few years.
And do you think Frank Schwindel or Patrick Wisdom has any sort of long-term, stayability, I guess, with this team? Or are these guys just pieces that they're hoping that they can utilize in a trade down the road?
Well, it depends.
Bridge guy. Yeah. 100%. Marver, who do you think, Marver, you know what, it's funny because we do have guys like Wisdom and Schwindel, but in your eyes, we all know these are bridge guys. These are, like you even said earlier, they're career minor leaguers that are having really nice seasons. They're going to make some money for the next few years. But when we're talking about the team that we think are going to be playoff teams, I mean, nobody on this roster really sticks out as being like the guys minus Wilson Contreras and maybe Kyle Hendricks. I don't know, Marver, you think differently?
No, I mean, those are the only two guys left from 16. Other than maybe half. Yeah, but I think that they should be making a play for some pitching. And that's one thing that they likely will try to get. And if they don't get a first baseman or a third baseman, then you may be left with Schwindel and Wisdom playing those positions next year.
Given what happened to Javier Baez this week with the Mets, a week ago he was giving the thumbs down to the fans. He's kind of ruining any sort of chance to get in good with the New York Mets fans once he becomes a free agent at the end of the season. Do you think that increases the likelihood of him coming back to the Cubs?
I thought of that too. I mean, I thought that he really hurt his chances of staying with the Mets. I mean, the thumbs down is not going to help him around the league, and it makes, don't forget that Rossi is the manager, even though he has COVID now. He's the manager that played with these guys, and maybe you can have a little chit-chat with some of these guys, like Baez or whatever, and say, I'd like to get back together. So it's possible.
Lucky for Baez, he's not even the worst story to happen to the Mets this week with their acting general manager getting charged with a DUI earlier in the week. The Mets are a hot mess, and perhaps Baez looking at it as a potential free agent is, I don't know if I want to be at a place like this.
I'm so glad you said that, Paulie, because, we got to keep things 100%. We got to keep things on the board, right? And whether or not you agree with Javi and whether or not you think it was Bush League on the way the fans reacted or the way the bench reacted, whatever the case may be, I don't want to hear this holier-than-thou attitude from the front office when your general manager is doing that. Like, this is a team that is trying to rebuild its image, and we all know how much the everything in the New York market is magnified. But how are you going to spotlight, players having a problem with being booed at compared to what your front office is just going through? I think the New York Mets have a bigger issue to deal with in the coming months. But beyond that, Javi Baez coming to Chicago, I always thought that was the more likely of all the stars coming through. But even then, just looking at how this team is playing right now, I think the Cubs are moving forward. I think they've kind of put away the 16 roster. I think Wilson Contreras and Kyle Hendricks being part of that team are almost inconsequential. I think there's value in them, and they just so happen to be at that right age group. I don't think that there's any sentimental value right now with this front office or with this ownership. I think everything is by the playbook, and I think they're going to be as callous as they need to be this coming up off season. But you know what, guys? Before we move on, I want to give a quick shout-out since it's the first episode. We want to make sure we remind everybody on WCPT we have a full lineup this coming week. Even though it's Labor Day, we have best up episodes coming up. I know the boys are hard at work, but we have Santia Jackson, Tom Hartman, Stephanie Miller, and Joan Esposito, Patty Vasquez. We have a huge array coming up week. Guys, what do you think is going on, though, for the rest of the Cubs moving forward? What would be something you're looking forward to, Paulie, if you're a Cub fan heading into the end of the season?
I think it's just trying to appreciate Schwindel and Wisdom and some of these guys that you're expecting to see go on the team next year. And I'm trying to put on my goggles as a Sox fan that I had on the last few years, where what made it exciting from the beginning of the rebuild in, early 2017 to last season when they finally were competitive was watching the development of certain players. Now, the Cubs are a little bit different because there's not necessarily certain prospects that had the hype that the White Sox prospects had going into it, but I think it's kind of the scouting it, like looking at your team from a scouting lens rather than from a fan's lens of rooting for them to win every day. I think now as a Cubs fan, it's going to be fun watching the development of certain players and rooting for certain players to try and stay on this roster long term.
And that's one question I wanted to ask you two, Marver and Mercado. Looking forward is, there's some of these kids you're going to keep, but if you're the Cubs, are you going to be looking to grab one or two big free agents this year, or are you just going to let the kids ride this out a little bit longer?
I'm fascinated by what Marver has to think, because I think Marver has a good eye on what is going to happen, maybe down the middle, because we're in that weird... Marver, where are you at right now? Because they're in that weird growth age right now, right?
Yeah. Well, I assume that they would spend some money, because they obviously don't have to spend the money on the guys that they let go, and they have a bunch of young kids like the top prospect, Crow Armstrong from the Mets, and a number of other guys that might turn out to be halfway decent. But if you look back at 2014 when Rizzo was the only guy on a terrible losing team, I mean, they're hoping history repeats itself, and they get a few young guys like Bryant Baez, et cetera, and that can come through. But I just suspect that they got to do like a Lester, like they did the last time, get some stabilizing pitching, because their starting rotation right now, they're trying to get the young guys, Steele and Thompson, et cetera. But I don't think that's going to be the way they go. I don't think they're going to go totally youth. You got to have some experience, some established talent to really make it happen.
Hey, you're listening to the Sports Cubicle here on WCPT 820. If you got thoughts about the Cubs, White Sox, whatever sports topics you want to talk about, give us a call, 773-763-9278. We're curious what you think about it. And Jim from Chicago's got some Cub thoughts for us. Jim, what do you got?
Great show, guys. I just want to say it took the Cubs 108 years to win the World Series. It probably took them 154 years. But they could do one thing. They could pay minimum wage. They could be the first team to hit the playoffs at minimum wage. That would be.
I don't know. It's like the Tampa Bay Rays style of doing things.
If you could save the Ricketts a little bit of money, I'm sure they could use it. I'm sure they're clipping coupons now. Well, anyway, guys, great show. Great show. Take care.
Thank you, Jim.
And a whole new phrase, the Moneyball, right there.
Right, yeah. No, I think if anything, this progressive station wants the Ricketts family to spend as much money as possible on the baseball team, because we know where their money goes when they're not spending on the baseball team.
Absolutely, Paul. So, I do agree with that one.
But I think the Cubs are in a position where the Ricketts family can't make excuses. I don't think they've displayed themselves as doing a full rebuild like we saw with the White Sox or the Astros or what the Cubs did about a decade ago. So I really do think they're going to hit the free agent market hard, and I really do think they're going to try and bring back Rizzo, Bryant, and Baez until those guys sign the dotted line somewhere else. The pitching market this offseason is going to be interesting, and I'm really curious to see if the Cubs are willing to open up the checkbook and bring in a star veteran player, such as a Max Scherzer, someone like that.
Paulie, I want to kind of jump in really fast, because I'm glad Jim brought this up, and you went down the rabbit hole. Marver's been on it for a few weeks now about what they need to do. You need to bring in somebody with these young guys. You can't do a full rebuild. There has to be a rearranging of the franchise. And I think more than, and Jim hit it on the head, people are frustrated, they're angry. They know that things have to change. They know things were going to have to be moved in a certain direction. Nobody had to enjoy how it was done. But this front office and this ownership, they're building brand new sports books, brand new buildings, and these hotels and these lavish businesses. And rent is expensive, but was there correctly? This team needs to spend and get its optics right. They had a 100-year celebration, whatever the heck that was, over on Wrigley Field, and it looked like a big popcorn fart. Why? Because it just doesn't fit the scene right now. This is what this team needs to do. It needs to get itself in order. It needs to get its front office in order. It needs to get its vaccination, rate in order. And this team needs to get things straight. That's the problem with this Cubs team. Everybody can see right through it. Fine, if we're going to see your capitalistic ideas in the world of sports, then you have to show us results eventually. And this is not going to be a 5-year thing. They're not allowed those 5 years like they were the 8 years, or for some people 60 years, or some people 80 years. You heard it in our first caller here on the Sports Cubicle. People are not buying the Ricketts BS.
Yeah, and it's a team that really can't make excuses. What they did to the fans just over the last few years, and I think falling short of expectations the last few years. I really do think they owe the fans at least some sort of explanation, some sort of transparency. And let's keep in mind, this team does not have a general manager. Sure, yes, Jed Hoyer was the general manager. He's been bumped up to president of baseball operations. He is acting as general manager, but they don't have a general manager. So I think the front office does need to align itself and start planning long term here, because I think this is a lot for someone like Jed Hoyer to handle.
Well, it's a good thing that we have the higher standards now. I mean, look at the Seattle Mariners. They have the longest drought of not making the playoffs. So, I mean, at least we have that they've made the playoffs for the last 5 years, and hopefully, that they'll do the right thing and rebuild correctly. But, there are places like the Cleveland, whatever their name's going to be, and, Seattle, where, the expectations may not be as high. So I think they've raised the bar, actually, with what's happened in the last few years.
I just want to one question before we move on here. Marver Mercado, how many years before this Cubs team makes the playoffs again? Where do you think they will be in next year? And when do you think they'll make the playoffs again, really?
2020, 26 maybe. I don't know. Something like that, maybe.
Mercado?
Yeah, if I'm going to just play the odds, I'm going to say 2024.
Yeah, I think sooner than later, just based on the fact that they're in a small market division. I mean, they're basically a big fish in a small pond. So I think with the right savvy moves, they could really turn this around quickly.
I mean, I do agree with that, because the NL Central, I mean, the Brewers kind of came out of nowhere this year. And, the Reds kind of bumped up too. But, for years, I've always argued with Cubs fans, you guys have a, weak cookie-cutter division compared to what the AL Central used to be,
I don't know.
This year.
AL Central is able to squeeze out a lot of talent, but it's also small market teams. And I think you're seeing the White Sox take advantage of that right now. The Indians were supposed to be a good team this year. The Twins were, favored by many experts to win the division. And sure, the Indians aren't going away anytime soon, but a nice 10-game gap between the White Sox and the Indians makes it feel safe for the White Sox right now. Twins just kind of fell apart out of nowhere. And meanwhile, you've got Kansas City and Detroit in the midst of rebuilds. Detroit's been a bit of a surprise, could be a contender next year. But at the same time, the White Sox are more equipped to win long term, and it's a bigger market team, even though the White Sox have always acted like a small market team compared to the Cubs. They're still a major market team, and despite the reputation, Jerry Reinsdorf has opened up the checkbook and been a top payroll type of team when they're in contention. You look back at the late 90s, early 2000s, those were some big payrolls.
I mean, you look at the team this year, got guys like Dallas Keuchel, Lance Lynn. They're not, Yasmani Grandal. They're not signing they're not getting small paychecks here. Even some of our big names, like Lucas Giolito, Dylan Cease, they're still going to be getting that big paycheck, even bigger when they're a contract.
And just wait until arbitration kicks in for some of those guys based on their performances. The White Sox will have tough decisions to make in about 2 years here.
Yeah, Mercado, were you trying to weigh in?
And they do. Well, yeah, and Paul's right. When it gets to arbitration, it's going to be tough for those guys. But where you do have to give them credit, and I'm glad you brought it up, Evan, is they paid their guys, though. The guys that they believed in for the future, Eloy, Abreu, Robert, they believed in them, and they gave them money. They're not going to have to worry about these guys in their championship window. And they're young enough where you are going to have an interesting negotiating table eventually. But they took care of their guys. They believed in their scouts. And say what you will about Jerry, at the very least, they put their mouth with their money with, and I got to give them credit for that. I got to give them some points for doing that, and it's working out for them. And right now, in a bad AL Central that may be developing, that may have an interesting team next year on top of the White Sox, you got to strike while the iron's hot. You got to do it right now, and your team is going to get healthy. This is a team that's had a tough time. It's finally bouncing back. Their guys were nagging injuries, but you gotta do it right now. Boys, we're heading up into halfway through the show. I'm at this wedding. It is time to boogie down. You guys have a packed show. Before I head out, I just want to give out some love for everybody on our first episode of the Sports Cubicle. I will be back in the home base on the couch on my lazy butt so I can yell at Devin, Marver, and Paul next week. You guys can follow me over the universe. In the meantime, we'll be promoting all the stuff that we'll be bringing on next Sunday. Boys, next Sunday, the NFL is back. We will be making sure we lead people up to Bears versus Rams. And because of that, I will give my predictions. The boys will give theirs in a little bit. I have the Buffalo Bills and the Green Bay Packers in the Super Bowl. I will also give a wild card of the Baltimore Ravens. I like the Ravens on their wins over and a possible Super Bowl contender. But Bills, Packers, the Bills finally win the Super Bowl. I'm on Twitter at Mike M Media, Instagram, Mike Mercado Media. Check us out at Sportsman on Couch, at Couch Sports Talk. Paul, Marver, Devin, I love you boys. I love you, Chicago. This is going to be an amazing ride until they decide that they made a horrible mistake on Sunday from 67.
All right, Mercado, thank you so much for joining us this week. Much love to you. Have fun at the wedding and get your butt back on that couch sooner than later, boy.
And get on that dance floor.
Thanks, Mercado. Looks like Trubisky's going to the Super Bowl. Trubisky in the Super Bowl, right?
That is something I do want to. That is something I want to bring up next. So the Super Bowl season, the NFL season starts next week, and I want to do a little bit of a prediction between all of us here at the Sports Cubicle, just who we think is going to make the Super Bowl. And I guess, Marver, I'm going to ask you first.
I mean, who can go against the GOAT again? I mean, we had Tampa and Kansas City last year. I mean, it seems like those are the class of the league. I mean, Tampa's going to probably play Green Bay, again in the NFC title game, and then you got to figure that Kansas City is going to be strong in the American. I mean, I like Buffalo. I don't think they're going to make it though. I just think Kansas City still is the class of the American Football Conference. So I mean, I think a repeat. I mean, I call that Major League Baseball. I think it's Tampa, LA for baseball, Tampa, and Kansas City for football. That's what I'm going to go with.
I mean, I have to agree with you there, Marv. I was doing my research today, and I'm like really looking at the NFC, the Bucks and the Packers. Who else can you really choose between those in the NFC? It was really hard, and I have a feeling Aaron Rodgers, attitude problem this, during the offseason, that might actually affect, the way the team is run. So I got to go with the Bucks. And again, for the AFC, I really want it to be the Ravens. I really want Lamar Jackson to prove he is one of the greatest. But I got to go with Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, and I think the Chiefs are going to beat the Bucks this year. So I'm going to go for a repeat, but a different victor. Paul?
Wait, so Marvelous said Tampa Bay is going to be winners again?
I just said they're going to play. I didn't pick a winner.
I was going to say, I didn't hear a winner in there. So who's the winner?
I didn't know we had to pick a winner. Okay, I'll go with Kansas City.
Kansas City?
Flip the coin, Marver.
All right, so I guess it's down to me. I have a completely different Super Bowl than you guys do.
Of course you do.
But like Mercado, I have the Bills in it, and I really wanted to give it to the Bills, but then I found out where it was going to be played, and the team that I have playing the Bills will once again be a home team this year. I have the Los Angeles Rams, and they're going to be hosting at SoFi Stadium out in Los Angeles, so the Rams beat the Bills like the Bucks last year on home field advantage.
Why do you think the Rams with Matthew Stafford are going to do this?
I think because they got there with Jared Goff 3 years ago. Stafford is a way better quarterback than Goff. That's why they traded for him in the way that they did. They have the defense to do it, and I just think that maybe Kansas City is going to burn out, Tampa Bay is going to burn out. It's an opportunity for the Rams, and I think there's maybe, based on what happened with Aaron Rodgers this summer and the Packers, the soap opera there, perhaps not all as well, and maybe that will lead to chaos on the field. And I think by default, it just ended up being the Rams or whoever wins the West. Really, that's going to be such a tough division to get out of. And I think the Rams will be battle-tested enough to win the division and go through the playoffs. And I would have picked the Bills if it was played at a different venue, but when I saw it was going to be played there, I was like, oh, wait a minute, that's such a huge advantage. And I think that's part of a big reason why the Bucs won last year in the Super Bowl against the Chiefs.
I mean, that is very true. Every team that has played in the Super Bowl at their home stadium has won. So
it's 1 for 1, but
so
yeah.
You're 100%, Paul.
Yeah, 2 for 2 if you count the, didn't the Oakland Raiders play? Or no, it was the San Francisco 49ers played.
Yeah. Stanford, I believe.
Yeah, back in '84. So but I wouldn't count that one. I would only count Buccaneers over the Chiefs in Super Bowl 55.
Before we go to break, I want to go to the phone lines. Roosevelt, you're on the Sports Cubicle. How you doing today?
Hey, guys. Thank you for taking my call. Great show. Great sports show.
Thank you.
I wanted to talk a little bit about the Bears and the last game that I saw, and you guys saw. Number 87, Jesper Horsted, tight end. Do you think the Bears are going to use, in other words, Coach Nagy, is he going to, are they going to keep him? And do you think that they're going to incorporate him in their offense, use him as a decoy, and more of a slant receiver, and basically solve the tight end problem? Because from what I remember, hardly any Bears teams in the past have used a tight end.
Well, let's remember Greg Olsen when he was a rookie. I think that was the most the Bears have ever used a tight end as a receiver, and I think that's the way the NFL was kind of trending anyway when Jimmy Graham was younger and in New Orleans. Now Jimmy Graham's on this team and he's a shell of the player that he used to be. Yeah. I can't see the Bears letting him go. Right now, Cole Kmet's going to be their number one, and Kmet's a great receiver in his own right. Local guy, went to St. Viator. Jimmy Graham, still on the roster. I don't know how much of a cap hit that's going to be if they get rid of him. But, you're talking about Jesper Horsted. I mean, he's so deep on the depth chart that I can't see him making it. But Roosevelt, if he impressed you, I mean, watch out. Maybe he's a guy that's going to get scouted around the league. Maybe he makes a practice squad. I just really don't see him cracking the Bears' 53-man roster, though.
And I want to weigh in on Jimmy Graham here. What I've noticed with him, that guy scores touchdowns. If you put him in the end zone, he is going to score, and that's all he is. He's not going to get you a lot of fancy football points, but he will get you one touchdown maybe every couple weeks, and that's why I say they keep him around. But yeah, Cole Kmet, he's a young kid. He was on the Rewind Sports 60. Maybe we'll have him on Sports Cubicle someday. But I definitely think the two tight end system is a great way to go in Roosevelt. I could see it. I'm not holding my breath though, because again, and I do agree with you. The Bears kind of with tight ends for years, other than Greg Olsen. Years ago they traded for Adam Archuleta, and look how that turned out for them. Just they don't, I feel this is something that they're going to have to stick with the kids they have now and slowly build. I mean, I'd love to know what you think, Roosevelt. Like, what do you think the Bears need to improve on the most going into this season before we hit the break?
Defensive line, in my opinion, because the second game they played against the Bills, they were just blown out. I mean, they didn't impress me as much. The new kid that they got, the new quarterback, I mean, he's awesome, but you gotta soak in some of the way that he's going to be playing for this new coach Nagy. So to me, it's defense. I don't know what you guys think about that as far as the line, because they were getting pushed back even in the last game, if I remember correctly, because they were leading by more points than what they wound up at the end. So.
Yeah, I do agree. The Bears, ever since Lovie Smith has left, the Bears' defense has kind of been on a slow downward spiral. I mean, I get it. Lovie Smith was one of the best defensive coaches in the league, but in the NFC Central, that's not going to win you
the title.
Thank you.
NFC North.
NFC North, yes.
I was going to say, what year is it? NFC Central. Wow. I mean, and I wanted to bring up Martellus Bennett, too, in between Greg Olsen and now as another wide receiver-based tight end. Those are some weird years when he was here. But, Roosevelt's right, though, about the defensive line. I mean, I think the Bears' defense is nowhere near what they were in 2018, and I think people are expecting that type of defense to come out this year. I mean, the secondary has problems. They don't have as much depth as they did 3 years ago. I could see it being a problem this year. I think people are expecting the Bears to be a hot defensive team, but they end up giving up a lot of points just because week to week they're just going to struggle to contain passing games.
Very much so, and that has been a big thing. The Bears will allow a lot of points, and for years we had guys like Mitchell Trubisky who could not generate a lot of points. And you feel with someone like Justin Fields now who can, I kind of see him kind of being like Lamar Jackson, Russell Wilson 2.0 a little bit.
Yeah, he's a scrambler. He's going to create second chance opportunities, much like Mahomes and Wilson and those guys that you named.
Right, and I definitely feel that could be a different thing. So do you think if we have a better offense, I don't want to say lackluster defense, do you think that's going to help? Could it help us improve more?
Absolutely, in the sense that you keep the defense off the field if you have a better offense, and that's the hope, is that Fields isn't going to be 3 and out all the time, and he's going to create those opportunities to maybe, convert on third down. How many times do you see a team on like 3rd and 7, 3rd and short, especially a Bears team, and they're not able to convert it? They're trying to run the ball on long yardage situations, or a pass on short yardage situations. Just I could see something like that where Fields is going to create an exciting offense, and maybe possession will be something that the Bears will have more. But I think they're quite a ways away. And, this is an Andy Dalton team right now until otherwise stated. I kind of want to just see Fields get some garbage time reps before they make him the full-time starter.
Yeah, Andy Dalton said this is his team. Marver, you got anything you want to weigh on the Bears before we go to break?
I mean, I hope they can do better than 8-9. That's about the best I expect from them. They can't be 8-8 this year. 8-9, I'm predicting.
That's another thing we should do, is predict their record, but maybe we do that next week.
I say we do that next week after we see their first game. This is the Sports Cubicle on WCPT 820 AM, Chicago's Progressive Talk. We'll be right back after this quick break. Stay tuned.
Tom Hartman.
But it looks to me like the only explanation that I can come up with is that they want more people to die. Now, why would they want more people to die? Well, because if they can get the pandemic rolling again here in the United States, it will cause states to shut down. And if states shut down, then the economy goes in the tank. And if the economy goes in the tank, the party in power always loses the next election.
The Tom Hartman Radio Program. Weekdays 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. on WCPT 820, where facts matter.
Do you remember last year's historic rainfall? Well, at Permaseal, we certainly do. And as much as we like helping homeowners solve their problems, we'd much prefer to help you avoid them. Now, today is a great day to call Permaseal for a free foundation inspection. We can identify any potential problems you may have with your walls, floors, window wells, and sump pumps, as well as give you a written estimate of any existing problems that you may have been living with. Our inspectors are also trained and certified to identify any structural problems and concerns that you may have. The inspection is free, and the peace of mind that you will have when the next thunderstorms come rolling through is priceless. Permaseal has earned an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau and has helped over 450,000 homeowners just like you. Call 800-421-7325, 800-421-SEAL, or visit permaseal.net.
Because facts matter. You are listening to WCPT 820.
And welcome back to the Sports Cubicle here on WCPT 820 AM, Chicago's Progressive Talk. Give us a call, 773-763-9278. I got some White Sox confessions I need to make to Paul Marver. But first, Paul, you want to talk a little bit of college football here?
Yeah, I just want to touch on it, that college football, I mean, it did start technically the week before with Illinois defeating Nebraska, one of the few games that was on last week. But this was the first big week, first week one of college football. Some great marquee games. As far as local teams for us, tonight we've got Notre Dame and Florida State, which actually probably kicked off just any minute ago. Notre Dame number 9 in the country on the AP poll. They're at Florida State. 7-point favorite for the Fighting Irish. Should be a victory for them, but Florida State's supposed to be a good team this year, and even though they're unranked, this is a big chance for the Seminoles to really make a statement tonight. But around some of the local teams, kind of a disappointing story when you talk about the Illini after they defeat Nebraska, go 1-0 in the Big Ten. They have another home game, and they play University of Texas San Antonio, which on paper sounds like, oh gosh, they should be able to beat a team like that, not in a power conference. But Texas San Antonio is pretty good in their own right, and they were able to win in an offensive showdown 37-30 last night in Champaign. The Illini have a tough one next week. They go at Virginia for a 10 a.m. local time kickoff, 10 a.m. Central Time, I should say. So we'll see what the Illini can do. I know there weren't high expectations with this year being Brett Bielema's first season, and of course the adjustments that those players are going to need to make. The guys that he didn't recruit having to adjust to a new system that they didn't sign up to play for when they agreed to play for the Illini. So it's going to be a rough year for the Illini. The win last week was good for them, but losing last night to Texas San Antonio is a bad look, and I don't feel good about them going to Virginia next week. As for Northwestern, they had a chance to really jump out with a good victory in the Big Ten, but they weren't able to hold off the Michigan State Spartans. That was played in Evanston. It was a 38-21 victory on Friday night, a big national broadcast on ESPN. Northwestern has an easier one next week. They're still at home, but they're going to play Indiana State at 11 a.m. I believe Indiana State would be an FCS team based out of, what conference would that be with Illinois State and
Missouri Valley.
Missouri. I wasn't sure if Missouri Valley carried over to football, because I know SIU used to be in, what was it, like what was that conference? Like the Gateway? Yep, yeah, Gateway Conference. There you go, Marver with the knowledge here. But last but not least, a local team that actually did do something exciting. The NIU Huskies go to Georgia Tech and win 22-21. Now, they get a little bold, and instead of playing for the tie, they play for the win with a 2-point conversion. And Ty Ritchie ending up with the game-winning catch in the back of the end zone on the 2-point conversion. If you go back and watch that, I don't know if that's a catch. It's very debatable. That ball looked like it might have hit the turf, but they called it a successful conversion, and the Huskies have a chance to go 2-0 as they come home and host Wyoming next week, 12:30 kickoff on Saturday.
So are Georgia Tech fans going to be like Cowboy fans here saying, no, he didn't catch it?
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure there's a lot of people saying that right now. But yeah, we'll see. I mean, sorry to the Yellow Jacket fans, but Illinois schools can certainly use this because we don't get a lot of good football up here.
No, not we definitely do not here. So for weeks, I teased Marver, I teased Mercado about the White Sox train. And while I was waiting for the White Sox train, another train came up. And I got to admit it, guys, I may have complained about all the strikeouts. I may have complained about the low batting average, but he's proved me wrong by raising it and hitting home run after home run. I am on the Yasmani Grandal train finally after almost 2 years, $84 million. James McCann has been playing like garbage in New York. I say, let's go, Yasmani. He has definitely proven it, and I have fallen off another train for another guy who I used to love all the strikeouts that we don't see anymore. I used to love not seeing him give up home runs and hits, and that's Dallas Keuchel. I have kind of just finally fallen off for a guy who had a 1.99 ERA last year to I think he's at 5.64 now.
Yeah, it's bad. His last couple of starts have been really bad.
That is definitely what I wanted to actually go into next. When I'm talking about White Sox starting pitching here, who do you consider the ace of this team? Because for you, I would have considered that Lance Lynn a few weeks, but the past 2-3 starts now, if I can find my stats here, he's just been going a little bit down, and that concerns me towards the end of the season here.
Yeah, because he played, I think his last start was against the Cubs, wasn't it? And that was where he gave up. Oh, that was the 7-0 loss that we don't talk about. Yeah, when the Cubs were basically a AAA team coming into the South Side and shutting out the White Sox last Saturday. Lynn was the starter in that game, and I guess he has a knee injury. That's why he's on the injured list right now. I can't imagine that it's terribly serious. I know the mode that the White Sox are in right now are kind of to rest up guys and kind of cycle through different guys as they kind of wind down. They have such a comfortable lead in the American League Central that they can play around a little bit and give certain guys reps or rest based on where they're at right now to get ready for October and kind of round out that roster too in terms of bringing up a guy like Romy Gonzalez, one of their September call-ups. That was a bit of a surprise to people, but he was raking down in AAA and he's a utility player. Now, I don't know if he can make the roster. Damian Perdue, who hosts Think Theory Radio on the station here, was telling me that he had heard some sort of loophole where Gonzalez might be able to crack the roster. But I'm pretty sure that if you're not on the roster before September 1st, that you can't make it in. So I don't know if that's a 40-man roster thing or what. I'll have to look into that for everyone. That's assuming that Gonzalez even makes the 26-man roster in October. But it's a White Sox team in transition, so I'm not really worried yet. Tim Anderson has missed so much time with the soreness, and I think if they were in a bit of a playoff push, like if they were in Cleveland's situation or if they were in the American League East right now, I don't think you'd be seeing guys hitting the injured list so easily or getting rest so easily. So I'm not going to worry yet. But as far as to answer your question of who is the ace, given the fact that Dylan Cease struggled today against Kansas City, the fact that Lucas Giolito has been up and down this year, let's not forget what he did on Marathon Day back in Boston in April. He had a disastrous first inning, didn't even make it out of the first inning. I know that's not an indicator of what he looks like otherwise, but for the most part, Lynn has looked pretty solid, minus a couple of bad starts here and there. They haven't been complete and utter meltdowns like we've seen out of Giolito or Keuchel. So I would still say that Lynn is the ace of this team, and I think they're really just kind of putting them in bubble wrap for the time being to get them ready for October. I fully expect him to be the Game 1 starter in the American League Division Series. I know I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself because they still haven't clinched the division yet, but the way everything is pointing, I think that's essentially where he's going. As far as the number 2, that's a good question too, because now you're talking about Carlos Rodon. He's going to miss his next start with more shoulder soreness, but it doesn't. I guess Tony La Russa said it doesn't necessarily mean that he's hurt. I think it's a similar situation where they're trying to rest him. But I think Rodon ends up being your 2 only because he's the lefty in the lineup. And now I would have said Keuchel, but I don't even know if Keuchel's even going to make the playoff roster at this point.
That is what I've been wanting to mention too. Is I got Keuchel's stats right here. In his past 7 starts, he is 1-4 with an 8.33 ERA. That is disastrous. Woof. And you want to guess how many innings he's pitched in his last 7 starts?
Collectively, yes. I would say 11.
31.
31.
He's
okay.
done 31 his past 7
Oh, 7 starts. Okay, I was thinking 4 starts.
No,
So
yeah.
either way, yeah. No, so that's an average of about 4 innings a start.
Yes, that's not what you need out of a starter here. And I mean, he again,
especially with
this is
bullpen.
this is his worst year since his rookie season. I do agree. The bullpen has a few shining stars, but
the bullpen's been good lately, though. But I was saying, like you really want your starter to get 5 or 6 innings. Granted, how much this bullpen has had one guy. Usually, it's out of the whatever 3 or 4 guys they end up landing on in the later innings. There's always one that ends up having a bad game.
True, but as I'm going to Keichel's last starts, they had 4 relievers pitch that game. That is not good. And I did complain a lot about Rick Renteria not knowing how to manage a bullpen last year. And La Russa, he's a veteran coach. But if you got to go through your bullpen in one game here because one of your starters couldn't perform again and again, it might be time to be like, Dallas, you'll be here next year because we can't afford to get rid of you because of that contract, but you're going to have to sit the playoffs out. You'll get a ring if we win it all, but you are too much of a liability.
I think part of that has to do with the White Sox really don't have a long reliever right now, like a mop-up guy when they find themselves down that early, because they're basically with the injured list stints of Rodon, now Lynn, Giolito. We didn't even mention him with the hamstring problem that popped back up this week, which doesn't sound serious as well. But with the rotation, the way it's had to have been with the starting pitchers, now you have to get Reynaldo Lopez starts. So I think the fact that they have to cycle these guys in and out means that they take away the fact of a long reliever having one, and you don't necessarily want to throw another guy into that role because then you're messing up the repetitions that he has and the appearances that he has. You're shaking up the roles of the entire bullpen at that point. So I mean it's a problem that they put themselves in, and it's not necessarily a panic mode sort of problem, but it's definitely cause for concern leading up to October, given the fact that this team really hasn't had an opportunity to gel as an entire unit. They were saying before Grandal came back, we haven't seen this lineup when it's all put together, and it's like, I don't think we'll ever see this lineup completely put together.
Until game 1 of the playoffs.
Yeah, exactly, until game 1 of the playoffs.
And I'm glad you brought up Reynaldo Lopez, because out of all 3 starts this week, and he did the best, he only pitched 4 innings.
Yeah.
And it is just, I know the Royals are the team that, they could be in first place, they could be in dead last, they will get 3 wins in a season, and those 3 wins will be all against the White Sox, so they always have that team's number here. But still, looking at the performance this week, teams that are, we always worried because against teams that are 500, they lost. Yeah, they were close. Yeah, playing these teams that are, bottom of the barrel here almost, the Cubs, the Royals, they even struggle with the Pirates. It's I don't know if they're just, resting themselves because it's like, oh, these aren't teams we need to worry about. But I don't like that mindset of we're going to sit back and rest a little bit here because this team, I want
kind of has a tortoise in the hare sort of feel to it.
Exactly. And I can see that being what the White Sox are doing here. And I'm not crazy about it. I want this team to have that winning spirit. I don't want them to, they could win out the entire season. That's great, but I don't want them going into the playoffs like, oh, we got the best record in baseball. We're going to kick everyone's butt. No, I want you hungry for the win every chance.
Let's not forget. Oh, go ahead, Marver.
Yeah, I was going to say, I like Cease for the most part. I mean, maybe today not so much. But Kopech can do some long relief, and it just doesn't make any sense to me that they, with the pitching they have, that's usually what's going to be the key in the playoffs. And I keep saying they're going to be playing Houston 99%, I think, in the first round. And so that's something that I'm really thinking about how they would do against Houston, because that's going to most likely be their opponent. And with the pitching, if it's healthy, that should really carry them. And they have, like a murderer's row lineup. I just don't get why they don't seem to have what's necessary to go all the way, and I'm hoping they will. So that's my 2 cents worth.
Looking ahead at the White Sox next opponents, they're on the road at Oakland, which we know historically how the White Sox do at Oakland. It's just not good. This year might be an exception, but at the same time, that's also the place where they lost in the first round of the playoffs last year. So bad recent memories for this team out in that stadium. Then they come home and they play the Boston Red Sox for 3 games, take a break, and then they have the Angels coming to town. So in their next 9 games, those are some tough opponents, even though the Angels aren't necessarily in the playoff hunt. You still have, Shohei Ohtani possibly pitching in one of those games, and he's been pretty good lately. And of course, like we've been talking about, the rotation of some of these players, being benched, getting repetitions if they're kind of coming off of a bench role. I don't know if we're going to be putting, the best team on the field against the Angels in the next week here. But when you look at the Indians and what they have ahead of them, 7 of their next 10 are against the Minnesota Twins, who we know are struggling right now, and then 3 against Milwaukee, which is a tough team. I don't think the Indians are going to climb back into it, but I think a week from now we might be sweating a little bit more when we're talking about this race in the American League Central.
And I'm glad you brought the Indians up too, because I can see they look like a team that is hungry and could easily, if the White Sox start getting sloppy, they could easily take it away. And I hate the Angels Stadium so much, and the White Sox, I do.
Yeah,
it has the biggest, you can catch every foul ball there because they got that giant gap. Mm-hmm. I hate it. Back to what we're talking about with sports, so they're going to struggle out there. And I mean, Boston, they're what? I believe they're in first for the wild card hunt in the American League. I believe Boston is first in the wild card hunt.
Second. It's basically Tampa's kind of running away with the division. The Yankees are kind of right behind them. So one of those two is going to be the winner. One of those two is going to be the host of the wild card. But it's a pretty tight race with Boston, Toronto. Well, Boston has the lead, but then following them, it's like Toronto, Oakland, and Cleveland's kind of inching their way closer to that. I mean, Cleveland's got a better shot at making the wild card than the division, right? But at the same time, I think they could really find themselves back into the division race if this week works out the way we think. I mean, realistically, the White Sox could drop their next 6. Those are tough teams that they're playing. And realistically, Cleveland could win their next 6 or their next 7, given what kind of Brewers team they're going to face and what type of Twins team they're going to face. But I mean, I really do think in 10 games, we might be talking about a 5-game lead or a 6-game lead in the division, and that magic number not going down. It currently is at 18. It only went down by 5 this week. I mean, that's not a lot given the pace that they should be on right now.
And that is something I do want to mention to you, Paul. Do you think if, the magic number stays the same, if Cleveland gets closer, do you think this White Sox team might, wake the heck up?
Then I think you're going to see them go into panic mode, and they're going to pull back Tim Anderson to bring him back into the lineup. They're going to, activate guys as soon as they're eligible to come off the injured list. You're going to see regular rotation, possibly a 6-man rotation with Keuchel and Lopez both in there. But at the same time, I think you're not going to see starts getting skipped in about a week here if they have a bad road trip out in Oakland.
And that is something I want to mention. You're talking about the 6-man rotation here. Mm-hmm. I do see Lopez getting in there, but for the playoffs, do you think they just go down to a 4-man rotation then, or they put Lopez? Or would this be a battle for Lopez and Keuchel?
I think they'll go to a 3-man rotation. Ooh. I really do. I think it's going to be Lynn Rodon and Lynn Rodon Giolito. I think Cease might end up being a spot starter if they need him in a best-of-7 series. Maybe that Game 4 starter to just kind of reset the rotation. Should it go a full 7? But at the same time, I think they can win with the 3 that they've got, considering how good at points this season Lynn, Rodon, and Giolito have pitched. You might be able to get through the divisional series with a sweep with those 3 players.
Marver, would you like to weigh in on there?
Yeah, you're right, Paul, because don't forget, in the 5-game ALDS, you're going to have 2 games and a day off, and then 2 more and a day off. You can get by with 3. And I don't think that those Cleveland soon-to-be Guardians are going to pose any threat. Even if they got within 5, now we're talking, what is it, September 15th by then? I wish in a way that they were pressured, because sometimes it makes a team more, suited for the playoffs when they've been playing in a tight race, at the end of the season. That's my worry for the White Sox. But I don't think the soon-to-be Guardians are going to really get as close as 5 games.
And that is something I'm glad you mentioned, Marv. We've noticed how many times has the wild card team won the entire World Series here. They're in that mode, and I don't want the White Sox to get in sleeper mode here. I mean, you said you're fine. I'm sweating, Paul, and it's not just because it's hot in the studio. I am a little nervous here with what this team could do, and if they make it to the playoffs, I don't want it like last year where, they got that 1 win, and it's just an embarrassment afterwards. And, I don't want them getting swept either.
Yeah, it's not the Indians that I'm worried about. It's whoever they got to face in the American League playoffs. A lot of people, Mercado said it too, as long as they avoid Houston in the first round, they should be good. No matter what, they're going to have to play someone tough in the first round, whether it's Boston, Houston, New York, Tampa, Oakland, whoever it ends up being, even if it's Cleveland, because by then you might have Shane Bieber back, and in a best-of-5, I don't like that. So, realistically, I think what happens is the White Sox win the division. The Indians are going to be out of contention. It's going to be New York probably hosting the wild card against either. I liked Toronto given what they have ahead of them and how they handled Oakland this weekend. I really like the Blue Jays sneaking in and getting that last wild card spot. Realistically, I think the Sox play Houston, probably go a full 5. They got to hope that whenever they face Framber Valdez, a lefty, the White Sox are great against left-handed starters. They have to win that game if they end up facing him. Should they get to the next round, it's probably either Tampa or New York in the next round, and that's going to be even tougher than Houston. And then if they get to the World Series, whoever comes out of the National League, the favorite being the Dodgers, it's just going to be rough no matter what. So you can't play the game of, I want to avoid this team, I want to avoid that team, maybe if we can sneak by that team. You just got to beat what's in front of you.
Exactly. We can't pick and choose in the playoffs here. If you're the team that's going to win, you got to beat the best teams. You can't be like, oh, I need to avoid her. Oh, I'm like, no. I've been saying they need to get tough and need to get hungry for it here. The season is almost up, and I'm getting worried here because I do not want to do what the White Sox always do. They've made it to the AL Central. They've won the AL Central how many times? 5 times? 6 times now?
Let's see. The Central started in 94. They won it in 2000, got swept by the Mariners that year. They won it in 2005. We all know what happened that year. They won it in 2008, just barely, but they only won 1 playoff game and were knocked out by the Rays. They didn't win the division last year, although they were the first team in the American League to clinch a playoff spot. Remember, they fell to 3rd.
It was so weird.
Which was, it's kind of similar to what's going on this year with La Russa's kind of experimenting with what he's got. But at least La Russa's doing it in a way that we've seen Tony La Russa do it before, a guy that's been there several times. Rick Renteria is doing some weird stuff like putting Rodon in relief situations. And of course, pitching to Jose Ramirez when that guy was just on fire in late September last year, which basically put Cleveland back into the race and got them second place, almost first place in the division. So, I mean, it's not a great track record ever since the American League Central started. I don't know if you're old enough to remember the 2000 playoffs, Devin, but it was
7.
Yeah, it was miserable. They came out of nowhere, were the best team in the American League, and then they finally get to the playoffs and got swept by the Mariners. It was disappointing. I don't want to see that happen this year.
The good news is this will be the first time in history that the White Sox will be in the playoffs in consecutive years. Can you believe it?
Yeah.
And they are going to play. I don't see any way they avoid Houston in the first round because the number 1 record is going to be out of the East. So they're going to have to play Houston in the first round. And no doubt in my mind, and that's going to be tough. So you can't, like you say, you can't play avoiding anybody because it's right there. It's the map. It's right in front of you.
At this point, they got to fight for home field in that first round because they're not playing like they're going to get home field against the Astros.
And that's going to be the only saving grace here. This is much like the Rewind Sports 60. This is the fastest hour in sports talk radio.
Hey, really quickly though, what's going for the White Sox though? Afghanistan's in the news. Hurricanes are hitting Louisiana. The White Sox are in first place. There's one other thing. It's like 2005 all over again.
Sounds horrible when you put it that way.
Yeah, but it's true. It's like a parallel to what happened that season.
The marvelous one, Dan Marver. The Palacious one, Paul Shivari. Mike Mercado, who is currently on the dance floor, not on his couch. I'm Devin Tingle. Thank you for joining us for the first episode of the Sports Cubicle. You can join us next Sunday at 6 p.m. Make sure you stick around for Cliff Kelly. And please, guys, get vaccinated. Have a good night.
Around the Town, Chicago, with Al Besloff.
The people in the audience were mostly, I would say, people in their 50s and up. There were some young people, and at intermission, I asked this young kid, I think he was probably 19 or 20, what he felt. He said, "This was cool. All these old people are wrapped up in one."
It's amazing when you get the young person's perspective,
Well, it's a lot different, and they don't know half the things that we know.
Sunday afternoons at 2 on WCPT 820.
This is Joan Esposito, and here at WCPT, we love pets. So much that we're spotlighting an